All right, I'm getting this out a little bit late. Had some things come up. Actually, was at the Monday night game in Las Vegas. Was able to watch that almost exciting game at the end there. But definitely want to start off with the first slate of games from this past Sunday. Just a just a terrible slate. Uh, one of the worst so far this season. Um, Starting off with the Cowboys versus the Panthers. I didn't really watched too much of this. I kind of went back and seen a little bit of what I missed. So I did notice that it looked like the Cowboys pretty easily handled the Panthers, and I did see some comments and some people saying, "Oh wow, look, the Cowboys did so well against the Panthers, and the Panthers gave the Eagles fight, bringing it towards the end of the game." As well as the Chiefs needing that last second field goal to win. But I don't think this says anything necessarily about the Cowboys. When we're looking at that, I mean, matchups play a big part in these games. And sometimes, a team might just be able to, take advantage of, some of the other teams' matchups. But also, I think when you're in an upper echelons of the NFL, especially the Chiefs, and in this case, last week with the Eagles were as well, when you are playing some of these bad teams and these teams that don't really have any playoff aspirations, you get their absolute best. And when I was watching the game with the Eagles and the Panthers, I think one of the big differences was Carolina was throwing everything they had at them. They were consistently going forward on fourth down. They were pulling out some things to try and get an upset. So a lot of these times when you're these high profile teams like the Chiefs, for example, I've heard it. A lot of these teams, it's like their Super Bowl. Like, let's do whatever it takes to go out and beat the Chiefs. So I don't think this says a lot about the Cowboys. Um, Although I am impressed going back and looking at a little bit of it, seeing Cooper Rush had some good throws and a good game. And I think where they really excelled was able to take full advantage of Carolina's bottom of the barrel run defense. They were able to hammer that, and they've been really leaning on Rico Dowdle. So I think they were able to kind of get up early and be able to lean on the run. So not going to spend too much time on this game, but overall, I think it's nothing really to be said about the Cowboys. I do think they are playing better recently, and I think they're finding a groove. They did pretty well against the Bengals, besides that kind of boneheaded play on special teams, which cost them the game. And speaking of the Chiefs, the next game, the Chiefs and the Browns. So this was an interesting game for me because I thought this might be a classic upset moment. I thought this is where, kind of like I previously mentioned, you were to take a team like the Browns and someone like Jameis Winston, who isn't afraid to go out there and sling the ball, you know, 40, 45 times, doesn't care if they throw three picks, they're going to come out with that same energy. So I thought between that and Myles Garrett, being able to take advantage of, the kind of lackluster O-line play from the Chiefs, maybe this was a little bit of an upset spot, but that didn't prove to be the case. I mean, again, I didn't pay too much attention to every game on the early slate. It was kind of hard to watch a lot of them, especially when I think you had a good amount of teams playing that early. But overall, I was kind of wrong. I thought at least it would be a little bit closer. Patrick Mahomes ended up having that high ankle sprain, which knocked him out of the game, and then Carson Wentz looked pretty good on a couple of throws. It's going to be interesting to see next week. I truly believe whether Patrick Mahomes is healthy or not, I just feel like you can't start him this next game. I mean, the you have this game, and then you have another game like 4 days later. To me, the reward's not really there. I understand that they need to kind of keep control of that number one seed, but I think they should be able to do so just fine. Um, I do think the Texans could take advantage of some mismatch maybe on the O line. They have quite a good rush, yeah, especially with Daniil Hunter. But again, I just don't see where you can, put him out there this early and put him at risk. And overall, I was hoping that this was going to be one of the better games to kind of keep an eye on. But again, it just didn't end up that way. Um, the Browns are they're just cooked. I mean, James Winston leaves. They put a DRT in there. Now they're talking about, whether DRT or Jameis is going to be the starting quarterback. I just think you just have a shit show there. Fans are pissed because they're talking about keeping Deshaun Watson on the team for next year. It's just kind of ugly all around. All around. But I mean, it's tough because you have some of these, like I refer to them as poverty franchises. You know, and it's not just poverty and how much money the team has or how much the team is worth, but it's more so like almost the mindset, the like scarcity mindset of not wanting to pay players, or even in the fact that they're paying the wrong players. Like this contract that they're now locked into with Deshaun Watson is just turned into a horrible decision. And I just don't see them digging their way out of it very soon. It kind of sucks to see because it wasn't nice last season when you were able to see Joe Flacco come in and kind of resurrect his career a little bit and get there and play some damn good football, towards the end. And then just to see, what it's kind of spiraled into. And I mean, the Browns have given a lot of teams, good fights. They were pretty close with um, the Eagles earlier in the year. They had that big win in the snow against Pittsburgh, but overall, it's just tough to see them putting much together. I mean, it's not impossible. I think you see what the Broncos did with Russell Wilson and being able to get out from under that contract, eat it, and be able to get someone like Bo Nix in there, someone that fits Sean Payton's style a little bit more, and have their defense running as well as they do. I think there's some options, but it just makes it tough because it just seems like the Browns are always the Browns. Then next, the Dolphins and the Texans. So I think in the beginning of the year, or maybe as the schedule came out, this probably looked like a very, very interesting game. If you were to look ahead, you would probably think there was major playoff implications at play, and there kind of was, right? Because this is where the Dolphins are all but eliminated from the playoffs. Um, with the loss of the Colts, the Texans now clinch the AFC South. But these are just different teams. What's interesting is both of these teams, you just had some just high expectations for them. Understand there's a lot of issues with the protection of CJ Stroud, and he's kind of going through the sophomore slump, um, not really performing as well as I think everybody expected or hoped from him this year. And then you have the Dolphins, where it's like you have this offensive genius and Mike McDaniel, and all these weapons, and what is Tua going to do with Tyreek Hill, and then you have A Chain, great running back they have from last year, and some really good pieces, but they just cannot beat anybody with an above 500 record. They can't beat anybody if they're not playing on a track field and perfect weather, and even then just it's just tough because I also understand that some like what happened with Tua when he was going through his concussion issue and everybody's just kind of holding their breath, thinking like what's going to happen? Is he going to continue to play? I understand that can have a big impact on the team, but I mean Tyreek Hill last year it was like it's going to go set the NFL receiving yard record. You know, uh, we're going to see A Chain in the second year. You have great pieces and weapons, and ironically, with all those weapons, it seems like their best piece as of late has been Jonnu Smith, like their tight end. And I just don't see much going forward with them either. I think, I mean, Probably not after this year, but in the future, if things don't change, then I think there's going to be a change at head coach, probably with Mike McDaniel. I think he's a brilliant play caller, but just something's not clicking there. And even when they are putting together good seasons, I mean, they're getting pounced out of the playoffs. It's a tough league, and then playing in that AFC, and especially in that division when you have to play Josh Allen, and like in the playoffs when they have to go play Patrick Mahomes in like sub freezing levels, they just don't really have the team, it feels like, to match up with a lot of these AFC opponents. They almost kind of strike you as someone that like really should be in the NFC. The NFC, it seems like that's where you kind of have the big stars at wide receiver, at running back, that kind of style. Whereas the AFC, you kind of think you have the Joe Burrow, the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allen that could just carry you through whatever. Whether it's 90 degrees, whether you're in perfectly sunny, whether you're in a dome, or whether it's 20 degrees with -5 wind chill or something like that, or you're playing in a foot of snow, that they'll get you through that game. That just doesn't seem like the case for them. Um, Dolphins are cooked. And then, speaking of some of the teams they have to play in their division, um, the next game, which I think was actually the most enjoyable, I thought personally, to watch out of that early slate, was Jets Jags. And at first, I looked at this and I kind of had a feeling um, that the Jets were going to come out, and I thought they were going to be able to really string together a really nice game, be able to win handedly. Jags actually made it a lot closer. Jets still came out with the win. I actually added the Jets to one of my money line parlays. Ended up cashing. That was a pretty good little pick from our previous show. I kind of took Jason, his four-leg money line, and I just added the Jets in there. And this got pretty exciting to watch. And I think the one thing I enjoyed most about this game, and I think other people would agree, was as much as people may not like Aaron Rodgers, or may even not like Devontae Adams, or kind of what they're doing in that team, and how he left, the Raiders to go to the Jets. It was really cool to watch that kind of old school, or not even old school, but just what we saw back in the day of like the Rodgers to Adams connection, and you kind of got a glimpse into like what their relationship is, and how connected they are, and they seem like they really put it back together, and that was really cool to see. Um, Again, I'm not the biggest fan necessarily of either of those two. But I do remember watching them in Green Bay, and this gave me some kind of nostalgia of looking back and just like, man, they were special. They had a great connection. And then Adams just goes absolutely crazy. 9 catches, almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Um, got pulled down on like the 1 or 2 yard line before getting a third touchdown. Sure, made a lot of people's days. I'm sure a lot of people probably had Adams on their fantasy bench, but if they didn't, that might have got them through that first round of the playoffs. But overall, um, I don't think it matters much in this game, if anything, for these two teams. Jags are bottom of the barrel. It's probably better for them in their draft stock that they lost. Um, but again, I don't see much happening with either of these two teams, or anything really interesting. The one thing I will say about the Jags, though, is I never really like cared for Mac Jones one way or the other. But to fucking see him do that 3rd and 10 scramble, and do that little spin move, and when he gets tackled, he gets up and does the Rizzler thing. That pissed me off. Um, as a former defensive lineman, I kind of lean towards the defensive side of the game, and if I was one of those players, man, or if I was like the next team that they were going to play, and we're watching some of this tape, I would be just trying to fucking destroy him. That shit was it. The funny thing about it was it wasn't even like it was the Mahomes deal where he's trying to go out of bounds and he cuts back in and makes a good move. It's not even that. It's just the spin move was nice. All right, it was good play to get you that first down, but that celebration and then it coming from Mac Jones, just again, I didn't like him one way or the other, but I think after seeing something like that overall, I was just like, now I don't like Mac Jones. Now, like, of course, I don't want to have another situation like Lawrence and Shire where he's knocking him out cold, but I wouldn't mind to see him catch a big hit and try and do that shit again. That was not for that at all. And then we got Commanders and Saints. This was a game. Funny enough, I had this Washington and that parlay I was talking about earlier. I thought they would pretty easily handle the Saints, especially after they they got those super zesty ass picks of their quarterback. That was behind Spencer Rattler, I guess. I paid no attention to this game. I think I flipped it on after someone texted me. Jason actually texted me saying, "Oh, Saints might actually win this." And I was like, "Let's go! I got to flip it on." And then I flip it on to the game right before they kind of get the failed 2-point attempt, and I was surprised. So I went back and I started looking, and it's like apparently the referee like screwed that up and stopped the clock. Like it was supposed to basically be game over. I mean, to me, that's insane. I haven't heard anything like blown calls and everything like that, but just stopping the clock. Again, I don't know too much about this game. This was one that was definitely on the slate that I kind of much like the Cowboys and the Panthers. That I'm going to be honest, I didn't really give a shit what was going to happen with these teams. Um, for my wallet's sake, I hoped Washington came out with the win, which they did. Um, being an Eagles fan, of course, I wouldn't have mind if they lost either. But I'm not going to get too much into that. Maybe I'll have a little bit more this week when I talk about the Commanders, matchup with the Eagles. I guess the one thing I will say is it's to me it's so weird, like how much everything can change through the NFL season because the Saints look like world beaters. When they go and um, they trounced the Cowboys. They put up, I think at the time it was the third highest points scored in a 2-game span. I think they were at like 90. That's insane. Just to see the downfall, uh, and it kind of tough. I watched and followed Derek Carr. Um, I think he's a good quarterback. I feel like not a lot of people give him enough credit, but and he's just kind of been with franchise. I think that just haven't really they put some good pieces around him, but maybe not gotten everything out of him. I think he's serviceable level quarterback. When you kind of think of Sam Darnold might be not the best example. Well, actually, maybe he would be because you have one of these quarterbacks that have good talent. They're not in the top 10, um, but they're a good quarterback to get you wins. They can help get you to the playoffs. If you work with them, you surround them with some weapons, some protection, some good coaching, you get good results from that. But it's just interesting because they were talking about like Kubiak being a head coaching candidate, and I think from just in the span of 2 weeks, people went from like a line is set up and everything to win this division, and it's like, oh, it's Saints, and then now it's like, well, with how the Saints have fell off, and then with the Panthers, stringing together a couple good games, and I understand they're still losing, but Bryce Young's looking better. Just like, aren't the Saints the worst out of this division after that hot start? At just kind of crazy to see the ebbs and flows in the NFL season and kind of what changes from week to week. And then Ravens Giants is the next game I had on my list of the schedule to go and talk about. Again, I think this turned out how everybody expected. I don't think this was a game that was on the big screen at home if they're watching multiple games, and I definitely don't think it took any precedence over any other games on the list. But I will say Lamar Jackson, he gets a lot of credit and praise, which is well deserved and earned. Um, but there is still like this almost like undervalued kind of aspect to Lamar Jackson. I've seen some comparisons, and I mean, you have Josh Allen, which has just become like a freak, just taking over games. But if you're looking at their stats, side by side, Lamar is putting together better performances. Josh has done some freak things, but so can Lamar. Again, with this game, I think this turned out how everybody thought it would. The Giants are basically in a two-way race with the Raiders to see who can draft Shador Sanders. I personally think Giants at the end of the day are going to end up with that number one pick. I think they're the ones that are going to draft Shador. Um, I think that I just have a feeling Vegas is going to end up with Cam Ward. Um, I think those are both the two top quarterback prospects. But, anyways, I mean, Lamar just put together a dominating performance, 5 touchdowns, 4 incompletions. I mean, just insane, perfect passer rating, just doing everything right. The one thing I will say about Lamar Jackson though is I feel like there was a point in time a couple of years ago when there was, I mean, there was a lot of like disrespect or people saying, well, you're not going to play quarterback in the NFL, right? What position are you going to switch to? We would like to put you a wide receiver, something like that. And I feel like still to this day, I mean, he's evolved so much in his passing game, and he's an excellent passer. Um, but he's also the best like dual threat quarterback ever. Like the way he runs and his fluidity, his speed, his ability to make people miss, and I think most importantly, his ability to not take hard hits. I think that was always the drawback with Vic is he was so electric, but he just didn't know how to slide. He didn't know how to take hits, so he would just take these big shots, and then he's just started getting injured, and that was kind of the way to limit Vic, right? Is you just hit him, and then he's just not going to make it through the game. But I feel like there's still this almost aspect of where Lamar Jackson needs to prove that he's a legit quarterback or that he can pass from the pocket. But there's just sometimes, like I think back when they played the Eagles, he had some big opportunities. I mean, he broke one off at the end of the game. I mean, there was some holding, and it's in garbage time. But I mean, he had some big opportunities in a lot of these games to take off and get some big runs. But I do respect the fact that when he is scrambling out, he's not looking to run first. He's looking to set up a pass, which is great. But he doesn't take advantage of some of the rush lanes that open up, and is to take off and get some yards. And I don't know, just watching him, I just feel like there's something in his head maybe that he feels like he shouldn't be taking off or he shouldn't be using that. And I think personally that I think that hurts him. All right, and staying in that AFC North division, I'm gonna be honest with you. First time going through doing like the full slate and the breakdown of each of these games, and there's gonna be a couple ones that I just start skipping because we're getting to the point where you know there's clearly the matchups that we want to see and that we want to pay a little bit more attention to and focus on. Um, the Bengals Titans, you know, yeah, it's harped on it. It just sucks to see Joe Burrow playing at MVP caliber level and just not having the support around him. I think there was one shot where it showed Zach Taylor, the head coach, and Joe Burrow on the sideline. And, Zach, oh, good job. And Joe was like, apparently it was interpreted as, no, that's not enough. We should be doing more, blah, blah, blah. Again, Bengals easily beat them. I thought maybe the Titans defense would give them a little bit of a test, but uh, Bengals did just fine. Patriots Cardinals, didn't watch it at all. I think this is the game I didn't watch a single snap. I mean, Cardinals been cool to watch. They beat them pretty handedly. Um, but again, I just don't think Cardinals have enough juice. Uh, Drake May's exciting though for the Patriots. I think there's a lot of building blocks around him and stuff. Um, but again, I'm not gonna spend too much time on the game. Colts and Broncos. Everybody's talking about the Jonathan Taylor, the drop the ball, on the 1 yard line right before you're crossing the end zone. That turns out to be like the kind of pivotal change of the game. That's where, the Colts go from looking like they're going to dominate this game. Their defense is holding them. They're making some big plays, especially in the run game. And this was a huge momentum shift that just kind of took it away from the Broncos' hands. And I don't fault Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I do. You just gotta hold on to the fucking ball when you cross it. Like, as an Eagles fan, I remember when the first time I saw that was Tashad Jackson doing that. I was like, it just seems inconceivable to me. Then they were saying something like Jonathan Taylor was focused on doing his dance, and I'm not gonna spend so much time on it. Just hold the ball when you cross the end zone. It always happens on these plays where they're you know wide open, nobody's around them, and they just drop the ball. Like, I kind of understand you're making a huge effort to try and dive for the pylon, and then you maybe fumble it out. I mean, that's you still got to hold on to the ball in that case, but I mean, at least you're not guaranteed a score, and you just ruin it, and it goes back to the Broncos. The other thing I will say about the Broncos though is that Nick Benito, that that edge rusher they got, that guy is a stud. I think over the past couple of weeks, people are starting to realize how good this guy is. I mean, he's two pick sixes in 2 weeks. He's third in the league, I believe, right now in sacks. This guy's an animal. I'm like, where did he come from? I haven't been following the Broncos enough to really. I don't hear about this guy. I feel like not a lot of people do, but I mean, by the way he's playing, he's up there with the Miles Garrett, with the Mike Parsons. I'm not saying he's that player, but he's doing some really, really special things, and it's exciting to watch. And especially if you get this Broncos team, I mean, the Bo Nix, Sean Payton thing is like match made in heaven, right? I always liked Bo Nix back from watching him at Auburn and then even at Oregon. And there was all this talk about how, well, yeah, he has a high completion rate and everything, but all of his yards and all of this is done from screens or short passes, blah, blah, blah. Well, that just seems to work just fine in Sean Payton's system. And honestly, I think people want to see too much out of these players, and so much stock is put into, oh, yeah, well, can you do this? Well, what about this? Like, if the offense doesn't need Bo Nix to throw fucking 60-yard touchdown passes, I mean, Anthony Richardson showed that when he played the Texans earlier in the year, off his back foot, he can throw a fucking 70-yard ball right on the money into someone in the end zone. He's not doing it consistently, but just because you can do some of those things doesn't make you the better quarterback. Sometimes it's just the better fit, right? Like, I think if you look around the NFL and you take some of these quarterbacks, Like Jalen Hurts is in a very good situation, and he's not really comparable to Brock Purdy, but I think both of them have been set up by well-run organizations that understand their strengths and their weaknesses and leverage that in the games, and they win. I mean, Brock Purdy not as much of late, but you showed that you could take this quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant last in the draft, Brock Purdy, and you can run this offense, and that's conducive to his skill set, and you could be successful. But I think too many people look at being able to do absolutely everything. You know, I think it's very rare to find some of these players that from any position that could do it all, right? And those are the players that we really are generational talents, the ones that like we really admire, like the Calvin Johnson, for example, a wide receiver, right? You're not going to find a guy who's 6'5", 235 pounds that could run a 4.3, has a 40-inch vertical, could take a slant to the house, can run a deep ball, could fade, like everything under the sun. No, but sometimes you just have a guy like, put like a, I don't know. I hate to keep just using the Eagles references, but like a Deshaun Jackson, right? You're not throwing him a fade. He's an amazing player, but like he's a go ball specialist. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like I see all these comments like, "Oh, he's a slot merchant. He could only work from the slot." It's like, well, maybe that's the best way to get him mismatches, and the way the offense runs, that's the best way to feed him the ball and get him in the best position possible to succeed. It's like they almost want to take him and be like, well, you know, can you play running back? Well, can you play wide receiver? Well, how do you block? How do you run this route? I understand that they need to be well rounded. They need to be able to do all these things within their offense. But sometimes you just have players and you have coaches that understand the limitations, the capabilities of their players, and they put them in the position to succeed. You know, if we're running the offense this way and it's working, then why do we need to see it another way to prove that this is good, this is working? And then I feel like a lot of teams will put too much emphasis on maybe trying to do too much. They're not putting and leveraging their players' strengths and weaknesses. It's kind of a little bit of my rant, but basically what I'm getting at is the fact that I think too much stock is put in the wrong things in some of these players. And I understand it because as a fan, as a consumer, you want to see these freak athletes, these crazy plays, these players that could do it all. But from an organizational standpoint, what you want to see and what you want to do is win the game. The ultimate goal is to win the championship, right? So we're going to put our players in the best position to do so, and we're not really concerned if our running back goes for 1,500 yards, or if this wide receiver is doing this, or our team's playing this way. Um, that's it. That's kind of my rant. Man, I'm starting to realize that spent a little bit too much time on these the early slate and these other games that it's getting late, losing a little bit of energy on the games that probably deserve a little bit more time and a little bit more in-depth analysis. So this is the game I think it was the game of the week, right? That's one of the two that everyone wanted to see. Okay, where do the Bills stand and where do the Lions stand? Kind of a potential Super Bowl preview. Well, both these teams are interesting, and I think the Lions, back when I was talking about the Browns and kind of that poverty franchise, I don't think the Lions necessarily are that, but they're almost in the same boat as the Browns of just being almost like omens for like bad luck. Like everything that's could happen bad happens to them. I mean, the amount of injuries on this Lions team is insane. I don't think their defense was that great, completely healthy, but they were pretty damn good. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson led the league in sacks, or it was like top five, like even like the next month after he snapped his leg, and then Dan Campbell's having, that team ready to run through a brick wall. But I think with both of these teams, you just have just this really high powered offense. And I think as of late, it's just they're almost in positions where they have to outscore everybody. And it just seems like every week, you know, these offensive outputs from both of these teams are just. And I could go a little bit more in depth on the onside kick and the decision makings. I just think they didn't have a choice. The Lions are decimated. They could not stop Josh Allen. I mean, there was really nothing much they could do. It was exciting. I had this on like another screen, trying to watch it as I'm watching the Eagles game. But I mean, it sucks because the Lions really should and were the most complete team, I believe, in the NFL, and they're just kind of running out of bodies, really. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Dan Campbell could like get these guys going and get these people that are going to step up in those positions and see how they respond to his coaching and I mean Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator, is fucking outstanding. Uh, being able to do what he's been able to do with all those injuries, but it's just how long is that going to last? How long can he keep doing that? You know, but overall, I wouldn't take too much stock in this game. Uh, Bills are lights out. I think their defense is a little suspect. I believe, but I mean, if you have Josh Allen or you have a quarterback like that, it's still going to be tough no matter what the defense looks like to go out there and outscore Josh Allen. Um, but it just kind of sucks to see the Lions with that much injuries and kind of what's transpired there. But maybe they get some guys back if they can hold on and fight for that one seed. That bye will be a huge help for sure. All right, and then Bucks Chargers. Again, I didn't. It's kind of hard to watch this game, right? When you have the Eagles and the Steelers, you have Bills Lions. Um, but I did go back and look at this a little bit. To me, the Bucks are clearly the best team in that division. I know Atlanta kind of had their number a little bit, beat them twice, but the Bucks have not only beat the Eagles, they dismantled the Eagles. They're the only team in the NFL that clearly handled the Eagles and made them look like they were playing a 5-10 team, right? And surprisingly, I was surprised they put that many points up on the Chargers. Chargers have looked good throughout this year. I like what they're doing. I think they still need some key pieces to be able to compete, especially being in such a tough division. But I think the Bucks are a force. I think you have a situation where you have the Bucks in one division, and you got the Rams in the NFC West, and these are teams that are gonna, I personally think most likely they're going to come in at that division leader spot of the playoffs. Or, I mean, they're not a team you'd want to play in the playoffs. I think even with some injuries, having Godwin out hurts the Bucks a lot. But again, the Bucks just aren't a team I want to see in the playoffs. And then even the Chargers too. The Chargers play a tough brand of football. I mean, to see what Jim Harbaugh's been able to go in there and do and kind of turn things around and really implement the style of football he wants to play. Not afraid to, get rid of some players that have been there a long time and really establish how he wants to run this team. And again, I think in couple drafts, maybe next year, uh, probably more likely the year after, is where you'll really see this team and a big force in the NFL. And we have the Steelers and the Eagles. Again, as an Eagles fan, this one was just so sweet. They just dominated. the job Vic Fangio has done with this defense, and I mean they've hit on some amazing draft pieces. I'm not gonna spend too much time singing the Eagles' praises, but it's been really impressive to see what they have done this year. Um, I mean, what's most impressive about that game is I don't think people have put enough attention on is the last drive started. I think it was 10 minutes and 21 seconds in the fourth quarter, where the Eagles got the ball on like the 3 or 4 yard line. They ran out 10 minutes, over 10 minutes of the clock in the fourth quarter by going over 20 plays all the way down to the other time and just ran out. Steelers never had a chance to touch the ball. The Steelers had 2 possessions in the second half. It's insane. And I'm not going to spend too much time on going over kind of what happened in the media and everything. I think it's a little bit more so that there was some mismatches maybe that they could take advantage of. I think they felt pretty confident in the passing game. Steelers do have an excellent run defense. Let's say Saquon Barkley kind of coming out for a little bit with that hit from Mika Fitzpatrick, kind of sidelining him. You know, it. I think they kind of knew going into this game. This is a little, at least my thoughts or opinion is that they kind of knew what direction this was going to go or how they were going to have to come out and win this game. But it was nice to see him, go out and be able to divvy up to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and be able to, show that they can get it done, not just with Saquon Barkley, but also their other offensive weapons. And again, as an Eagles fan, it was an amazing game to watch, I'm not going to lie. And then Packers-Seahawks. So usually I'll do this game maybe a little bit separate, but I'll throw this in there. The Seahawks, I think they're a great team. There's some really great players. Do like their coach they got. I think Baltimore is really feeling the loss. Losing him as their DC. I think he's done an amazing job there. There's been some really impressive games, impressive wins. But I never really thought or bought into that the Seahawks were that good. Even back when they were like 3-0, they just seemed faulty. I don't trust Geno Smith too much. I think this is kind of where they run out of the luck and maybe the matchups that they like. It was exciting to watch them earlier in the year kind of take on the Lions. Again, the Lions, that's when they started getting a lot of their injuries, and, it seems like they were kind of hanging in there. They did beat the Niners, but they also got blown out by the Niners. The Niners are just not a good team. I just never really liked or felt confident in the Seahawks or Geno Smith just based on the games I watched or the wins they had. I feel like their record didn't really reflect who they are as a team. And I felt the opposite on the Packers. They were, when we do our betting show, the Packers, -2.5 seemed like the solid play there. I like the coaching. Matt LaFleur has done a great job. Jordan Love's a great talent. I don't think he's necessarily as great as everybody thinks. The talent's there. The weapons are there. He has a great coach to be able to maximize his talents, like I was mentioning earlier. Overall, I had to leave from the place I was watching, and I was able to catch the end a little bit. But I mean, just right out the gate, the Packers are just kind of doing what they want from them. I think it's a big testament to show that what Matt LaFleur was able to do with Malik Willis earlier in the year and the adaptability, to me, is what's so impressive. You're taking this guy that, the Titans didn't want, and then the second, he had to come into the game and play a couple of games while Love was out, they tailored the offense around him. And I think that's the problem, is a lot of these teams are just like, as a coach comes in and they're like, well, this is my offense, you're going to have to run it, but I think what really shows great coaching is, okay, this is either the matchups we have or these are the injuries we have, or like, how do we take, the loss or the injury of Love and how do we insert Malik Willis and how are we able to maximize our team's chance of winning? Well, their response was, "Well, we're gonna fucking run Josh Jacobs down your throat, and we're going to devise a game plan that maximizes our player's strengths, minimizes his weaknesses, so our team has the best chance of winning." And I think that just shows excellent coaching. I'm not saying Mike McDonald doesn't, but I don't think he um, has that kind of comes with the offensive prowess that some of these other, boy geniuses or some of these guys that come from the Shanahan tree kind of seem to have, where no matter what pieces they have, they're gonna put together a hell of an offensive game plan. But that recaps. I'll do a separate video kind of breaking down the Monday night games. I have some opinions I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper in when it comes to the Raiders, the Falcons, um, as well as the Bears. I want to spend some time on the Bears. I seeing kind of everybody's thoughts on Caleb Williams and me is not the biggest fan of him. I just have some different opinions that I'll probably get into another video.